First of all, good morning to everyone, and thanks for being here. I just want to share that we are very honored to have Dr. A. Surya Prakash, former chairman Prasar Bharati, and most recently Padma Bhushan awardee by the President of India. I would request him to share a few words before he has to rush to his next engagement. But sir, please just share a few words and then we'll get started.
Ellarigu namaskara. Wonderful to be here in the midst of all these brilliant minds. It's a matter of chance that I happen to be here this morning. Shashi and Alok Agarwal happened to drop in at my residence yesterday evening, and they told me about this summit and said, why don't you drop in at 10 o'clock? Because I have a flight to catch. So I said, all right. So I'm here, and I'm here before you just to convey my very best wishes for the summit and to all of you. Thank you.
Professor Ganesh Ramakrishnan is from IIT Bombay, heading the BharatGen project, one of the leading contenders to build a sovereign AI foundation model in India. So let me begin the conversation with you, Ganesh. If you could just describe where are we in this journey? Where is India?
First of all, pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me. We are at a very interesting juncture. Well, India could bring a paradigm shift in the way it builds AI by co-creation. I think that co-creation is a very important keyword, because in that process, the adoption becomes a lot more seamless. I've heard from CTOs, executive directors of banks, expressing their anguish with their own organizational adaptation of AI as against the adaptation of AI by all their employees, right? So there's a stark difference. We were actually at an ICSCI summit yesterday, and the same thing was being echoed. Everyone uses AI, but then at an organizational level, there has been a challenge. I think co-creation is the way. While we can boast that India is a use case capital, here's an opportunity for us to also leverage the fact that we are a use case capital to also become generators of technology in the process of co-creation. So that's one point, that we have an opportunity for paradigm shift. But otherwise, you can paint a very gloomy picture saying, we in terms of the research ecosystem in the country, we are not really up there in terms of AI. When I say research, I don't mean academia. I really mean the R&D investment from industries, right? And that's a constant cause of pain. And the fact that R&D investment for decades, and we have a legacy of not investing. I would still think this is an opportunity. The R&D has to step up, and it has to happen across the industry and academia. In academia, I must empathize with industry. The pain points they have in adaptation, not just of AI, but pretty much anything that is disruptive. So we need industries to step up, but we also need academia to step up, and this is an opportunity. Otherwise, you know the rest.
So, Professor Krishnan, if I could bring you in at this point. One of the trends that we're seeing is that AI has already entered the classroom well before any other kind of AI usage has happened. Students are heavily using it. How are you seeing AI within IIM Bangalore? What challenges are you looking at? What opportunities are you looking at?
Yeah, so something we realized quite early in the day is that we cannot fight AI for sure. So we have tried to welcome it as much as we can in the educational process. I think, but there are 2 or 3 aspects to this which are important. See, I'll just give you a little bit of background of how management education happens. We use a lot of case studies in the classroom as part of the learning process. And the whole idea is not to find a particular specific solution, but it's the whole thought process and the discussion, if you want, a kind of Socratic learning process that we try to simulate in the classroom. Now, if that is the objective of the case method, then a student coming and saying this is the solution is not really the way of using that method in an effective way. So our challenge is that we want students to learn and to develop their own thinking abilities. At the same time, we also want students to be able to use the AI tools effectively, because when they go into the job market, employers are going to expect them to do that. In fact, this year itself, in our placement interviews, we found companies asking prospective candidates questions like, if you have to make a digital marketing plan for the company, how will you use AI tools to do it more effectively? What tool will you use? How will you go about it, etc. So that's what's happening on the employer side. So what we are trying to figure out right now, to my mind, that's one of the big challenges, is how do we not sort of use AI without in any way impeding the development of thinking and analytical processes in the students, and at the same time make sure that they have enough awareness and enough familiarity with the tools so that when they go into the workplace or in the assignments and so on, they can use it. To me, that's the number one challenge. Number two challenge is more to do with evaluation and assessment. Just to give you a simple example, last time I was teaching my course, I gave a project and all the answers looked beautiful. So I knew they've all come out of Gen AI engines. There are no mistakes, beautifully formatted, fully referenced, all the rest. So I knew this is not written by these guys. And of course, when I read it, it was confirmed that it was indeed unlikely to have been written by them. But the interesting part is that because of this, while they were so beautifully written, the number of answers which were really outstanding was actually very few. The average level was pretty good because it all came out of some nice Gen AI engine. But I didn't see any of those flights of creativity or out of the box thinking, which I might have seen in previous years. So in a way, this mirrors the first issue which I mentioned to you, which is we want students who will finally be able to use their brain, do the co-creation, right? We want the human being and the AI to work together. We don't just want some output of that Gen AI engine.
Let me take the conversation a little away from AI in the classroom to a broader societal issue. Right? One of the big thrusts of the national education policy of the government has been around Indian languages and bringing down barriers in terms of learning with Indian languages. So Ganesh, first you talk about what you're doing with Bharatjan and how are you addressing this issue, and then I'll come up with
This topic very dear to my heart. History shows that countries that actually embraced and built on their own suite of languages have actually always made, in the long run, taken significant strides, not just in terms of metrics such as GDP, but also effectively in terms of the confidence level, right, with which you innovate. Innovation is very key here. Now, specifically with respect to Bharatjan, I have also precedent of work we've been doing on high fidelity machine translation. So you just can't pass textbooks to be translated into Indian languages and be at the mercy of the translation engines. Why? Because translation is a lot beyond just rendering the translation. It is incorporating domain dictionaries and domain constraints. It is ensuring that the drudgery associated with bringing consistency into the translated text and faithfulness to the target language are also facilitated through an ecosystem, right? So human in the loop. But how do you make the human in the loop effective? By bringing in good memoization, right? So there was this project Udan, which we have been running for several years, and we worked very closely with AICT and several government agencies to get tons of textbooks translated in Indian languages. So that gave us the confidence that actually it is possible to scale the process of translation by bringing human in the loop through thousands of translators. Initially, we tagged the entire process as it's a little funny thing. Basically, we used to call it machine-assisted human translation. But in comes Gen AI, and we have the term has flipped. It is basically human-assisted machine translation. But still, bringing the provenance is very important. The key word there is provenance. Now, the same idea of provenance we have brought into Bharatjan. Where does it begin? The provenance begins at the level of tokenization. Right, the way you view sequence of tokens as subunits, or you could actually view them even as groups of words Now, subunits, pre-tokenization is well known in the entire, LLM landscape. But unfortunately, Indian languages have received very less attention there. What we did is build very effective pre-tokenizers, build vocabularies. There's a lot of human intelligence required to build vocabularies such that words are consistently split across Indian languages. So Indian languages do share a lot of vocabulary. That is something we leveraged in actually building our tokenizers at scale. But in comes DeepSeek, and DeepSeek also opens up the possibility of grouping words, right? You can actually have multi-token prediction. And that is also very useful for Indian languages, because if you look at Hindi versus Bengali versus, Sanskrit or Malayalam, and that the group of languages where the suffixes are attached to the root word, right? As against Hindi and Bengali, you'll find the suffixes separated from the root word. In comes multi-token prediction. You can actually view all of them canonically. And we have a very nice slide, right, where we show you do this word grouping, and all Indian languages actually look very similar, including Tamil, right, which I speak. So if Tamil gels it with the other Indian languages, I would say all languages should actually gel well, right? So both on the vocabulary, on the structure, leveraging that to make very effective models. And I must also point out that today's LLMs are flawed with a lot of inefficiency. So we brought out this open source platform called Decile, DECILE.org, because even pre-LLM, there has always been this belief that there's a lot of redundancy in the data that is being exploited. But how do we actually make sure that the drudgery associated with creating redundant annotation and having redundant computation is also cut down? So data efficient machine learning, compute efficient machine learning, bringing all that to effective fruition, even in the LLM landscape, is a big area. Again, we are very well poised at BharatGen because we are doing this as a joint effort between the academia, 7 academic consortia members, and a Section 8 company, where we are able to hire the top talent in the country. I think models like this have to be built. And now, of course, the industry is going to be the most important component here for outreach, diffusion, and adaptation. And we'll maybe later talk about the industry partners who've been working with. But we really want to connect today with all of you. Rishi is here. Make sure that we actually build this for India, co-create technology, become generators of technology, look at Indian languages through the lens of Indian languages and not necessarily through the lens of English, and actually become data efficient. I would just to add to this, the same holds for speech, right? If you look at the phonemes across Indian languages share a significant phonetic vocabulary. Why do you need, duration predictions and the paradigms that are actually quite rampant for English, where the Australian English and the American English and the British English are poles apart. Whereas if you look at Hindi, there's a gradient, there's a continuum. And why is there a continuum? The continuum is there because, of course, things have changed organically, but that continuum can also be exploited to innovate locally. I hope I made sense.
No, very interesting. And not to put Professor Krishnan on the spot, but there's this whole talk of engineering in Indian languages, medicine in English. Are we going to see management courses in Indian languages anytime soon?
Well, management should be relatively easy to have in Indian languages. There are technical terms, but they can be quite easily, I think, converted into either local language terms, or you can continue with them. So I don't see too much of a challenge in that domain. In fact, I think, let's look at the practical side of things. The practical side of things is that today, if you look at the students who come to IIM and compare them with, say, 25, 30 years ago, they are not speaking as good English as the guys who were speaking at that time. Today, a lot of people speak a mix of Hindi, English, sometimes other languages. When I walk in campus these days, every day when I go for my walk, I hear largely Indian languages and predominantly Hindi. So I think many of them are anyway operating in a multilingual context. And, actually the purity of Indian language is a bit of a, maybe I'll get beaten up, but a bit of a myth. Because, if you look at, when I spent 5 years in Indore, I was really shocked. The day I landed in Indore, I picked up a Hindi newspaper and I started reading it. The first thing I found was no sentence had more than half Hindi words. All of them were English words written in Devanagari. Okay, that's more the way most of so even the language which people are using every day in a newspaper is a some kind of mixed language. I mean, it's not a pure Hindi that we studied in school all those years back. So I know this is not directly related to this, but I'm just saying that I think linguistic evolution has happened quite a bit in India, particularly in urban India. It's happened big time.
So let me pick on that in terms of the Indian context. Right? You said very interesting that you pointed out that there's a mix of Hindi and English. There are many such nuances and subtleties about the Indian context. And when we look at AI development today, how do we bridge the gap between Indian use cases and where the Indian technology, Indian models is? To give one example, I know Mahesh will talk about it a little later, but he has a unique problem from a very specialized domain, finance and banking. Now, if he goes to Ganesh directly, I'm sure the gap will be too wide between his business understanding and where the technology is. What role is how do we bridge this gap? Like, can the IIMs play a role? How will IIT be? Maybe we start with Krishnan.
Yeah, so maybe I just shift the subject a little bit and then I'll just come back to this. See, one of the things we are trying to do even in management education is make it more accessible in general. And one of the things we are doing at IIM Bangalore is to use online learning as a way of making this happen. Our classroom models are not scalable, and in any case, they're expensive. They will never manage to reach all the people they need to reach. So our online learning activity is now trying to reach out to people across domains. And we started with English, but we are already moving rapidly into other languages as well. So we are starting with subtitling in other languages, but we will bring voiceover as well. We are trying to use various tools to make that happen. So the idea is that we will make a lot of the content online multilingual. We already have 95 courses running on Swayam and edX. We are now trying to curate these into various programs. And one of the most interesting experiments we are trying right now is how can we create a program which will help MSMEs become more competitive. So we are trying to take all the learning content we have in different domains and convert it more into a kind of question answer kind of a format. So if the learner poses a problem, we want from the content a kind of solution to be generated, or at least the relevant content from all our teaching material to be generated so that the person can immediately see that. So right now we're doing it a little ham-handed way, but eventually we want to use AI to make all of this happen. Now, if you combine all of this together, if you take the fact that we are making this available, we are also going to be multilingual, we'll also be able to be problem-centric, then you're actually creating a great platform for people across the country to solve their problems. So that's the way we are sort of approaching this problem right now.
Yes, thanks. I think Professor Krishnan really set up the stage for me. I'll start with areas in AI where the divergence between languages, their adaptation in speech and text is actually very less apparent, and where the synergy is a lot more, right? And let's start with speech, right? So speech, the style, right? The accent is very much built into DNA, right? So even if a person is speaking mixed Hindi and English, the nature of the English utterances is going to be very Hindi, right? So it has that influence. Likewise, for Tamil speakers speaking Hindi, it's not just with English. So I think the first thing is to really capture the style information, which again reflects into what we call prosody. It actually reflects in, the pitch, the energy associated with the phonemes. So that is still very grounded in Indian language. The DNA is still Indian languages, right? Now coming to text, while the vocabulary does see a lot of shift, the grammatical structure, the syntactic structure, right? You have the newspapers you talked about are still adapting a Hindi syntax and filling it with English words, leveraging that. So I'm really not being non-realistic when we say we leverage the commonality, because these are very stark commonalities. The syntactic structure is still very common, even in written text. And when it comes to the lexical choices, right, which I was being pointed out, and probably that is being highlighted here, the lexical divergences. I think that's where we need to bring in dictionary constraint, domain constraint. When I say dictionary, I don't really mean dictionaries of the year, right? I'm really talking about practical dictionaries, right, which could come from common usages. So bringing all of that into ensuring that we are able to handle extremely volatile situations where languages are also changing, and as I mean, the influence as of English as you go from city to the peri-urban areas to villages. We should be able to capture that, and we don't have as much data as the Western world has. That's exactly where we need to bring in domain knowledge, and we are very happy that we are able to do that.
So, how can industry collaborate with you guys? Be it the AI work that you're doing at Bharatjan or any AI work that's happening at IIM Bangalore. What are the avenues for startups and the industry to come with their problems so that you can figure this out?
Thankfully, because the entire initiative is not bottlenecked by me as a faculty member, but has actual Section 8 not-for-profit company. Rishi is here. The best way is actually to collaborate and co-create. So collaboration is one very important element with Bharatjan. We have several collaborations with IBM, with Zoho. We also have, been working closely with many of the companies that actually provide compute in India and help them ramp up. So Sunil is there from Yota. I think collaboration is one and it's not just collaboration with industry. We also collaborate extensively with the armed forces. I mean, the government, water and sanitation department. So collaboration is key because then we can co-create. In several cases, it's also possible that we have developed models, we have developed expertise, and there's a need to be technology transferred or licensed. That's another mode. I would say we should explore. The good thing here is because we have a consortium, there's also an academic rigor brought in. We always think in terms of alternatives. Lay out multiple alternatives. There's no one, I have a solution, show me the problem, right? When we actually see alternatives, there's a level playing field, and it's also liberating for the engagement. So please reach out to us. That's why we are here.
Yeah, I just want to step back for a moment. I think if you look back at the last 30, 40 years, one challenge India has faced across various technological shifts is that somehow we have not been able to ride the wave very effectively. Whether it be materials, you take nanotechnology, I mean, in semiconductors, there are several examples, so I don't need to go into them. So I think the question is, this time, how can we sort of make sure we don't miss the race or miss the boat or whatever you want to call it again? So I think traditionally we have been good at a few things. We have been good at some kind of capability creation at some level. I'm just thinking back to biotech about 40 years ago. Government invested in creating biotech programs in 10 universities. There was some basic competence created. There was, of course, some research going on in specialized institutions like NCBS, TIFR, and so on. But somehow it didn't go much beyond that. I think when it comes to AI this time, we have a slightly different opportunity, partly because of the use case situation that was mentioned earlier, and the fact that in general, we have embraced digital as well as data in a reasonably good way, both in the public as well as the private spheres. So this time, at least, there will be some pull from the application side to make us, take more forthright steps as far as AI is concerned. So I'm not too worried about diffusion, use of AI, more use cases getting developed and so on. But on the other question which Ganesh raised, which is, will we actually become a leader in technology and so on? I'm not so sanguine there, because historically that has been a even bigger challenge for us. And there, I'm not sure it's only a matter of money, by the way. Tomorrow, if the government were to say, I'll give you 5,000 crores, can you convert that 5,000 crores into really good world-leading technology? I'm not too sure about it. It's not just a money issue. It is an organizational issue. It is a structural issue. Unless we try to address some of those issues, that money is not going to translate into technology leadership. Money will help, but it's not going, that translation will not happen. So I think there's some good things happening there again. In the recent budget, we had an allocation of 20,000 crores to build technology leadership. Broadly put, there's a plan to set up a fund of funds. There are, of course, many startups, but I think we really need to have a much more concerted effort to focus on technology leadership if we want it to happen, which means multiple things need to happen. We need to be willing to find the right people to lead those organizations. You need to be able to assemble talent. Just remember, a lot of the things we have done in the last 10, 20 years have not been following traditional methods. You look at how Aadhaar was developed. It wasn't developed in one government research lab. You look at how UPI was developed. It wasn't developed like that either. So we have used unorthodox structural solutions to do a lot of this. For example, volunteers, using people like Nandan and his ability to attract top talent. We have not used the traditional route. So I think we really need to see how we are going to innovate in the organizational and structural domains if we are really going to create technology leadership.
On that note, I think it was a very scintillating conversation. I'm sure there are a lot of technology leaders sitting here who are going to realize that vision that you laid out. So thanks to both of you for joining this conversation.